afternoon, everybody. Welcome in on this Monday as we close in on the start of the college football season. It's a fun thing to say. It's a fun thing to, you want to pinch yourself or whatever, but we are set, ready. Some of us are here all summer long talking about Michigan and the latest developments and everything that we could possibly do to get ready for the start of the upcoming season, looking at the team from every possible angle that we can. But when you get so close now, the hay is in the barn. This team just has to get ready for game week. What a week from today. And then the curtain's going up and we're off and we're ready. And it's a good reminder today. I was pinching myself this weekend. Yeah, it's kind of weird, pinching myself. But all teams that are out there in college football, all of the fans, every single fan and every single team is looking up at Michigan saying, we want to be like Michigan. We want to be like Michigan was last year. We want to be Michigan. So all of those fans and all of those teams, they're looking up at the maize and blue. The more that I look at this team, specifically, if the more I look at the defense, the more I like it. The defense is spectacular. The players that they have, we do know, I think we all agree that the key to this season is going to be how the offense develops. And I've said all year long, we all understand that quarterback is key. And so is the offensive line, how it develops. But if there's one thing, and it's hard for everyone. It's going to be hard for you. It's going to be hard for me. And it's the offensive line saying, oh, well, they'll just reload on the offensive line. But if there is one thing, in faith, it's not a strategy or anything else, but, just observing Michigan, what Michigan has stood for, and I know you have two sides of the ball, but if I would say number one has been the offensive line. That's been their identity, obviously, running the ball, the physicality. Anytime I hear anyone talk about Ohio State, they mention that they're soft, and it's because of the strength and the dominance of the Michigan offensive line over the last 3 years. And Sharon Moore knows that. And Sharon Moore was an offensive lineman. And, you are an offensive lineman. You know what that position brings and how important it is. And then, by all accounts, Grant Newsome, one of the younger coaches in all of college football, if he's not the youngest, he understands it as well. In Michigan, they recruit it a certain way, they coach it, they develop it. I'm saying all this about, I think I'm talking myself into more of, because it takes time to gel. Whoever the 5 best are, you come out at the end of this month and you get out there, the 5 that work the best together, and you get those guys like the Rock Cats. They're all working together in unison, and away Michigan goes. And I keep talking about, and we all keep talking about the quarterback, but then after that, I quickly say, yeah, the offensive line coming together, all new offensive line up there. But I am reminding myself and thinking that if there is one spot, you can take a leap of faith, and because what they stand for and what their focus is, it is the offensive line. So I'm feeling better about that. But the defense, you want to feel good about Michigan football, you just keep looking at the defense. You say, wow. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You want to start up front. You want to look at the front 7. You want to look at the back 7. Wherever you're at, you like it. And for instance, I was on the Maize and Blue review yesterday, and Lamar Morgan, the safeties coach, the defensive backs coach, was he talked about his group, and he mentioned Rod Moore. And for a second, I was like, man, you forget that for maybe you don't, but I did for a second that, that Rod Moore was going to be coming back with Makari Page as a safety. And Michigan, they're loaded right now, but man, they were going to be so loaded. And it's Rod Moore was such a great player right off the bat for Michigan. He didn't come in for spring ball, and yet he was out there immediately. He wasn't that heralded coming in. Rod Moore, I believe, from Ohio, and yet he exits. Maybe not yet, because there's a chance that he could still come back, but potentially exits as one of the greats ever for Michigan, whether it was against Jahan Dotson on that third or fourth down in 3 years ago, or whether it was making the last pick against Ohio State. But it was just reminded about Moore with Morgan talking about the different players in the secondary. And he said, these guys, when they have questions, they go up to Rod Moore. And I'm thinking, Rod Moore, great player and now great player coach. We don't know about the players part. If he comes back late in November, mid-November, against Indiana, Northwestern, and then Ohio State, the lift would be incredible for this team, to get a player like that, unbelievable. You can't count on it. You don't know with injuries. And he's got a lot to look and think about when it comes down to that. But the coaching part is the part I'm talking about right now, Rod Moore. And it's nice to have him in there as someone who understands, as the quarterback of the defense, can answer all these questions, because it seems like that I don't know if Michigan's defense is more complicated than other teams' defense. They're all pretty complex, but you have a advanced player who was just out there on the field, being able to be a sounding board for the players that are going to be trying to fill his shoes and all of that. And it's an advantage. And like I said, you like the team more when you just start looking at a certain area of the defense. And I was looking at the secondary yesterday, and even though they don't have Moore, they do have Makari Page, who was the starter last year, and Cujo, who comes back. Quentin Johnson, he made a bunch of outstanding plays, big time plays in big time games. Again, it's a cliche, but it's that way because that's the kind of guys that you want on a team. If Quentin Johnson had played well early in the season, like really well early in the season last year, but you didn't really see him when it was, push came to shove late in the season against, the last 3 games of the year, and then in the Rose Bowl, the championship game. But it was the exact opposite. Cujo played his best ball against the best team. So you got him in there. And then you're thinking, well, you don't really know about the depth. Zeke Berry, he could play safety, but he could come up and he can be nickel. He probably is. He could play, close or back. Either way, he's got that flexibility, just like McBurrows. You say, okay, these guys, they've been here. You've heard a lot about them, and it's their time. Big shoes to fill when you're talking about Mike Samer still, Agent Zero there. But then Michigan went out and they hit the transfer portal early with Barham and Preeb, and then late, they got a couple corners and they got a couple safeties. The one from Tennessee, Walker, and then the one from up the road, or whatever they say up there in East Lansing, down the road, Mangum. And whether it's going to be the corner from UNLV or the corner from Albany Hall, it sounds like it's going to be the corner from Albany that we might see in the mix more than anyone else almost immediately back there. That Michigan really at the front and at the back, when it came down to hitting that transfer portal, really helped out their team. So yeah, people are buzzing, and you're completely excited about the upcoming college football season, the defending champs, and it's here. We're ready. This is just the open of this show as I get into that safety dance, talking about listening to Coach Morgan, Michigan's DB coach, Lamar Morgan. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that defense and then some of the things that hearing about practice as they get ready for game week a week from today. And then another installment of the hype train. And that's where we'll end this show up. You want to know what's going on with practice and recruiting? I urge you every time I'm on here, and I don't just say it because I like to hear myself talk. I encourage you to join the Maize and Blue Review today if you like Michigan. If you love Michigan, I almost feel like you have to join the Maize and Blue Review. You talk about Michigan all day and all night with like-minded fans. You get the inside scoop, what's going on with the team. I've never done anything. Well, I shouldn't say this. Say it like that. Just been talking about Michigan as a sportscaster my whole life, but I would think that I don't know if I've been good at sales, but if I was good in sales, if I was selling Michigan, I would think that I would be a good salesman for Michigan because Michigan sells itself. You just knock on the door and say, "Hey, are you a Michigan fan? Hey, Michigan, let's make a deal. How do you do?" And it's got to be a little bit more involved in that. But if you like the product that you're selling, then what else? You don't need any pitch lines or any closing statements. You just and this is it. It's the Maize and Blue Review. It's Michigan all the time. So we'll see you over there. And I urge you for two things before we jump into the defense. One, if you don't subscribe to the podcast, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 5K before the start of the season. And that happens, I'm going to throw a big party. Details to follow. Also, kind of one and the same thing. If you watch this particular show, or any of the show, like last night, you got Hail to the Podcast there. The boys have dropping the info left and right. Tell another Michigan fan in your life, okay, this is some Michigan talk that you need to know about. So thanks for that. The word of mouth getting out there from the people really helps. There's no doubt about that. So I was looking at some numbers this morning with the Michigan defense from last year, and they won every game. As you know, they won the championship. So you're going to have a lot of great numbers. I mean, this is really the gold standard for every team forever that plays against Michigan. I know this because 97, I compare every Michigan defense up to last year and then last year's to 97. Oh, where were they here? Where were they there? When you look at the Michigan defense from last year, they were the best defense, scoring defense in the country. Number one. They ended up number one up at the top of the mountain. They won the national championship. Their defense had a lot to do with it. Their total defense, they were number one in the country. They were top 5 in rushing defense, number 2 in pass defense. And it just really goes all the way through. You look at some of the other superlatives. Number 1 in defensive touchdowns, top 5 in red zone defense, top 5 in first downs allowed, top 10 in third down and fourth down allowed. All of those numbers are fabulous. The thing that stands out when you look at this, and I don't know if it's just sore thumb or not, but it's right here in the middle, sacks and tackles for loss. Michigan was 74th in the country in TFLs. If you would have quizzed me and said, here's $1 million, where did Michigan rank last year in TFLs? I'd say, I don't know, they're a great defense. They were the number 1 defense in the country. Out of 10, I would have said something like that. I don't know what I would have said. But if you would have asked me the same thing about sacks, I'd say, Michigan's defense was so good last year. I mean, they were a great defense. It was a great team. I got to think that they were top 10 in sacks in the country. And no, that wasn't the case. 26th and 5th in the Big Ten in sacks. Now, this might be a good example of why, numbers don't tell you everything. Because if you were just sitting around saying, and I would buy this from you if you were selling to me that a great defense in modern football, you need to get to the quarterback and you need to tackle the opponent, whether it's the running, but whoever behind the line of scrimmage, to put them behind the chains. It's really important in modern football. So if you're doing those two things, that's gonna be marks of a good defense. And yet, they were number one everywhere else. And you say, well, why would that be? Well, they were really good tackling team. And then would I trade 5 or 10 sacks with taking some of these defensive touchdowns off the board? They covered really well, and then they were able to turn it over with interceptions and with defensive touchdowns, not only getting those interceptions or fumbles, but then taking them the distance, which, that's going to be more important. I mean, you could move around a lot of different things, and we just know it's interesting because we know that they won it all, and then we know that we'll compare all of that, but it's just, it was interesting to me that they were so far down when it came to tackles for loss and also sacks. So you do think about where it's going to come from this year, and you just look back to who led Michigan last year when it came to sacks, and Jalen Harrell, who was on to the NFL, and Braden McGregor. Harrell was number 1 on the team, and McGregor was 4th. Everybody else is back. You had Josiah Stewart with 5.5, Derek Moore with 5 quarterback takedowns. That's 2 and 3 on the team. And then Kenneth Grant with 3.5 and Mason Graham with 3 from the inside, getting pressure from the inside. Pretty impressive. But then you have those guys obviously coming back as well. And knowing the rise of Stewart and just the position that both Moore and Stewart were in, would I expect, if I was putting an over and under on Stewart's sacks this year, I would put it at 6.5. I would also put Derek Moore's at 6.5. And I feel like I would go over on both of those. And why? Because I see how those guys blast off the edge, and I know they're going to get a lot more reps. And Michigan had, let's just say, with the edge, and we're not sure. We know that TJ Guy has been getting an incredible amount of run, both in spring and the run up here to the season. The coaches keep talking about TJ Guy every time. Everybody's talking about that guy. And then Dominic Nichols, who was impressive and flashed at the spring game, will get some snaps too. But, Guy and Nichols, I don't think are Stewart and Moore behind Harrell and McGregor, who were the starters last year. So my point is in that I think you're going to get more snaps and you're going to get more sacks from number 0 and number 8 for Michigan in Stewart and Moore coming off the edge. Agree? Yes, you do agree with that, I would think. Why wouldn't you agree with that? Let's look at some of the feedback as we talk Michigan here on the Maize and Blue review. Juju talking some recruiting, saying that Miles is off the board, but Marsh is looking great for tomorrow. That's Andrew Marsh, the wide receiver, highly coveted wide receiver who would be a great fit for Michigan. And things do look good for the Maize and Blue. And if they get Marsh, that would be a great poll by this staff. That would be their, I was going to say third wide receiver, but they lost Wright. So their second wide receiver in there. And you feel pretty good about that. Tim is feeling confident in the quarterback situation. If Orgy isn't the guy and one of the other two guy beats the athlete out, we're going to be in good shape. Well, it's good to feel confident about it. There's no reason, I am in a let's see how it plays out right now. I have thought that it was going to be Orgy heading into the spring game, at the spring game, after the spring game, the start of the defense, or the start of fall camp, during fall camp, and here we are a week away from game week. I still think that it's going to be Alex Orgy, and it's going to take time for him to develop as a starter, just like this entire offense. But he's got a lot around him to really help him develop. One, he's got an outstanding defense, and they'll be able to get the ball back, and you get more bites at the apple when you're Alex Orgy. He's not going to be asked to shoulder the load for this team. And even though quarterback is the most important position, and it is the most important thing for Michigan anybody that's talking about Michigan, they're going to go, anybody talks about any team talks about their quarterback, but in even Michigan, who runs the ball and more than most every team out there, it's still really important. And the other thing that's going to help him out is that he's a great runner. I mean, he's an A+ runner. Right now, I don't know. Like, I would say it'd be a guess, and you'd say, "Ooh, that doesn't sound like a." I would say he's a C- thrower, but he only needs to be a C+ thrower for this team to achieve its goals, or at least to achieve my goal. And my goal is for them to get into the college football playoff. And I think he can develop if that's where he's at. If he is where I think he is at. I think as the season goes along and he has the running game, which he is a part of, because he's an A+ runner. I believe he's an A+ runner. With Edwards and Mullings and whoever else is going to end up being there with him as a running back, like Jordan Marshall, or the list goes on and on. I think that he can move himself into the he can move that grade up. Juju is like me. He's not worried about the offensive line with Sharon Moore going on. Here's Mark asking about the Friday show. Sorry about the Friday show. I had a death in the family, Mark, and I was going to do a show on Thursday, but I had a lot going on Thursday that I didn't anticipate earlier in the week. And I'm here, and I don't see missing any other shows, hopefully, to the start of the season. Let's go. That's what we're doing. Richard has been watching other podcasts, and they seem quite concerned about their offensive line. Yeah, they should be concerned about their offensive line, Richard. They did get one of their tackles back that could have easily gone pro. That was a big boon for them, being able to get one of their tackles back. But, and you're not a casual, Richard. You're here in the summer, and I'm not saying that you're just a casual if you're joining now because you're excited about the upcoming season, but you're just, I would say, normal. Super like Michigan fans every single day all summer are still dialed in. Don't know because they watched that Ohio State spring game, or at least they heard about it. And it was Urban Meyer at the half who was like, I got big concerns. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but it was very close to, I've got big concerns about Ohio State's offensive line. So, yeah, OSU should be. They've got a question mark. They've got a hot and cold quarterback. When you hear him say, the only thing he's got all this great talent, the only thing he needs to do is hand off and throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith in a bouquet, and he'll just be fine. I don't know. Anybody that goes out there, hey, just let's see. We'll see about him when it comes down to it. Mark talking about the safeties, the safety dance. Safety with a hurt wheel just back. Mangum and Page after 9 games thinking the current number 3 comes along quite a bit. P. Maximus weighing in. Morgan said Rod Moore comes to film study and practice as though he's still able to play. Hey, you like it. Juju said Morgan said Shug and Barry are leading the way in their position groups. Yeah, Shug, Barry at a nickel, and then Shug, for those that aren't following quite as closely as Juju, is Jyaire Hill. There's a lot of players that have nicknames, and they most often get called their nickname by their teammates. But then the coaches get into the act too, and I don't know why it gives me confidence, but when I hear Sharon Moore talk about Jyaire Hill, and it's just the way that he says, hey, who's the opposite corner of Will Johnson? And Moore just casually and confidently, he's like, Shug. Shug is corner number 2. Shug is opposite of Will Johnson. And then Morgan was the same way yesterday, or whenever he spoke recently. Who's the corner opposite of Will Johnson? Shug. It's giving me confidence just to hear he's all right. This is a stretch, but when you're an athlete that's just known by one name, Tiger, Ali. Now, there's more. That Michael, whatever it is. Shug. I feel like just when they just say Shug and everybody knows who it is, it's like they're almost telling you, we got a player. Now, he's not even the best corner on the team, so I gotta wait. But I feel good because the coaches are calling Jyaire Hill Shug, and there's no. Well, we know every day that the competition is ongoing. We know that there are a lot of guys that are working, and that are pushing in the competition and the steel, grit. We know all those things, but Shug is over there and it's just holding it down, where I feel like I just feel the confidence from the coaching staff and the players when they just talk about the other corners. They don't even talk about Will Johnson anymore. Will Johnson is so good that nobody even asks him, hey, what about Will Johnson? Will Johnson, he's great. That's the one thing about the defense when you start talking about him. Mason Graham is just a great football player. Kenneth Grant, great football player. Will Johnson at this point in his career has had a better career than Charles Woodson as a cornerback. Woodson had a pretty good junior year. That's how good Will Johnson has been. This guy, great football player. Just keep underlining it. And that should give you a lot of confidence as a Michigan fan. I know it gives Andres great confidence. He is a Michigan fan. Mark is somewhat disappointed that Michigan didn't try to swing McCord from Syracuse in February. He played some good ball for a first-year starter. Well, there's a couple things that would you have liked to have seen Michigan go into the transfer portal to get a quarterback? Maybe. McCord, coming from Ohio State, is a different, trying to pull a player. I know it's happened. Pulling a player from Ohio State in football, especially, it's it doesn't happen. Did it ever happen? Ohio State, I know it's happened the other way, but football. So automatically, it's difficult. Harbaugh put Michigan, everybody loves Harbaugh and everything. It put him in a little bit of a lurch by having to play out his NFL dream and how that went. That dinged Michigan a little bit, potentially, in their pursuit of a quarterback. Because all of the big-time quarterbacks that would have been transfers out there, and I'll put McCord in that list of QBs, there was uncertainty. You didn't know about Michigan. Harbaugh may have been, even though nobody, I don't what I was going to say. Nobody thought he was going to come back. A lot of people were hoping that he was going to come back, but the way that it played out, all the quarterbacks were almost gone, if not all of them. And you're saying February, but the teams that are already, maybe they should have been working behind the scenes and everything else. But I see what you're saying, but it could also speak to how Michigan feels about their quarterback room. And a lot of this, I know you guys, you lean on a show like this, Amazing Blue Review. You lean on the insiders to tell you about quarter. I'm going to give you something about insiders like our great Josh Henschke and Trevor McHugh. Those guys, even though they're talking with people that are at those practices, the quarterback talk, they're not even getting the straight. Nobody's really on the outside getting any straight talk when it comes to the quarterback. So, we all have to just have our feel on it and our take on it. If I hear somebody talking extremely confident, anyway, whoever it is, about the Michigan quarterback situation without saying, well, look at this and look at, then I know that they're kind of, it could be great orators and could be a great insider with all this information. And so they're buoyed by, being somebody that gets told a lot of information and then they're telling you something about the quarterback and people are eating it up. I don't buy it really from anyone. I don't even buy it from Sharon Moore. It's you just got to go out there in the depth chart. What I was saying, to get back to it, and it did take a long time to get back to make my point. They may like their they may have liked their quarterback room just fine. They may not have thought that they needed a transfer. All right. That was my point on that. And admittedly, that's one of those things that I think that there'd be a lot of people that would say, I don't agree with you. Okay. Not everybody's going to agree with everything I have to say. Scott wants to know about the breakout freshman and sophomore. If I had to pick one player to break out as a freshman, Jordan Marshall would be a name to go to, but I am going to say Cole Sullivan at linebacker. Liked what I saw from Cole Sullivan. I am a little bit biased when it comes to Cole. He came on this podcast, and I enjoyed speaking with him. But he also flashed. Dominic Nichols would be the other one as an edge player who could be in the two deep and could be getting some snaps immediately. But I'll go with Sullivan. I liked what I saw from him as a sophomore breakout. Ooh. I am going to go with Eno Etta. Another guy I'm a little biased. You pick players that you root for and everything else. I root for Eno Etta. I liked Michigan when they were recruiting him. I like talking with Eno Etta. I like his game, and I'm looking forward to seeing he's behind some great players. But he's going to get some snaps, and if you were looking for Michigan's defense is great, but you're saying, hey, what could be? It would be depth on the defensive line. Etta would be part of that. Those are my picks. Scott is saying Cabana, talking about special teams. He is the next Caden Colazar. Well, that would be nice. That would be nice. And we know Cabana's got speed to burn. Richard is optimistic how underrated everyone in the media is about Michigan. Yeah, look, with the media, when it comes down to it, it's going to be really hard. Like if you try to put yourself and so many the biases all the way through. If you're really trying to get someone, and if you're trying to be fair, would you pick Michigan number one in the country? No, you wouldn't. You don't like Ohio State, but would you put Ohio State in the top 5? You would have to, unless you're so biased. You'd be like, they always have great talent, and I'm not putting them in the top 5. I mean, you have a lot of reasons. And as fans, I'm talking to you guys right now, you've never had any reason not to try to not be biased. I mean, you're totally biased. Most of the media is totally biased. But my point here is when a team, when the first thing that I'm doing when I'm looking at teams and how they're going to do the upcoming season, I'm going to see who they lost. And Michigan lost their entire offense. The other thing that I believe is the most important thing in college football is the head coach. And Michigan lost Jim Harbaugh. Well, they lost their entire offense. They lost their head coach, their greatest coach, and they play a murderous schedule. Those are 3 gigantic things. That's why Michigan is ranked where they're ranked. I mean, you look at it from afar, and, oh, yeah, they got a nice defense. You can see that, but you can also understand by people that are trying to give you a gauge on what's going to happen with the upcoming season, why they're picking the teams that they're picking. So I don't think that Michigan has been undervalued. And what is absolutely true is that we know in week 2 that they're playing Texas, and if they win that game, it doesn't really matter. They won't be undervalued. Then they will go from being undervalued and under the radar to being one of the leaders to win it all. That's how, I mean, it is going to, the optimism about Michigan when they beat Texas is going to go through the roof. Michigan 2-0 and they beat Texas. They look out. I mean, it is, they had a parade back on 5 days after they won the Natty, January 8th, Saturday the 13th. They had a parade. It was 20 below out. I was there. If Michigan beats Texas, I feel like there should be another parade. Or at least I think that they should start planning a parade. That's how crazy things are going to swing. That's why people love college football. The huge emotional, and everybody's like, overreact on everything. Well, there will be such an overreaction with Michigan, and there should be a reaction, and it should be very positive, because Michigan breaking in everybody that they're breaking in against what looks like on paper a very formidable Texas team, there should be a very positive reaction. But nobody just has a nice even keel positive reaction. It's got to be way overboard. So yeah, let's get the parade plans out. I'll plan it. Dave talking about the sales. If you have a soul, you cannot be a good salesman. I don't know, Dave. I've worked with a lot of salespeople down through the years. And you know what they tell me about sales? Is that everything is for sale. It's what makes the world go round. I mean, back when you were on the old Silk Road, I mean, you're pulling up on your camel and you're like, hey, I've got some frankincense. They're like, I got some whatever, potatoes. Let's make a deal. I mean, so I guess that's bartering. I don't know, sales. It's all about sales, Dave. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of con men out there, and that's the thing. Richard's saying the media has underrated us for sure. All right. Let's, okay. Go Blue. This, I always feel like, it's sometimes just a straightforward approach. I'm like, hey, what's your name going to be? Your screen name on YouTube? Michigan Go Blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's available. Who knew? The closer we get to the season, the more confident I am becoming in whoever the quarterback is going to be. 10-2, 11-1. Here we come. Simple offense, control the line of scrimmage, dominate on defense, win ugly. I don't know. Win ugly. You know, if you give me any score for week 2, it's not going to be ugly. Are we thinking, 13-9? That would be beautiful, I think. In beating USC, Xerox it, 13-9, 13-8, 7. Dave talking about McCord's daddy. Yeah, I don't know about that. But, those are things that are factors. Those are things behind the scenes and people's parents. There is a whole subculture of, Dave, I'm saying it can be fun. But the people in my business talking to family members and uncles and brothers, I mean, it gets to be, woo, man, that could be something. Who was, who got whose daddy really gave him a bad name was the Spartan quarterback, whoever even his own team hated, of Cook, Connor Cook. Connor Cook was a good college quarterback for Michigan State. And he got a bad rap when he went up and they won. Did they win the Big Ten? And Archie Griffin was there and he treated him like he was like a bellhop or something. And it wasn't a good look for Cook. But I don't know. Cook's dad would be online all the time and really came off as, I don't know, a jerk. And just because your dad's a jerk doesn't mean that, your son's a jerk, although he may have been, talking about Connor Cook. But his dad didn't do him any favors. So, yeah, your dad can, the parents that are just sit there in the stands and support their kids. But, they have all this, like, they've got people calling them all the time. Hey, what's going on? A lot of this information that comes out, that's from so-and-so's daddy. They love talking. Woo, some of the parents. The ones that just support their kids and support the school. And, they're like, those are the ones. Those are the real ones. Shout out to them. Scott thinks Zeke Berry could be a breakout star. I am thinking that is a good pick. Good pick. Let's look at a couple more and Scott is making predictions about Derek Moore talking double-digit sacks. All right. I'm here for that. It would be nice. Graham is our best pass rusher as a defensive tackle. That's scary as hell for opponents. Well, that's a very good spot to get into our next segment, which is the hype train. Juju says that Mason Graham is our best pass rusher as a defensive tackle. Mason Graham, we don't all forget because you know it. But Mason Graham is a great football player. One of the greatest Michigan football players in his first 2 years ever to put on the maize and blue. Not only did he just come in, he came in. Mozzie Smith was a first-round pick of the Cowboys, was on that defensive line. The Jenkins, who I saw had a sack for the Bengals. Maybe it was last week. Maybe it was this week. I watched some preseason football. 2 outstanding, NFL-type interior defensive linemen. There were some other guys in there as well. And Graham started from day one as a defensive tackle. That's almost unheard of. Messner way back in my day was a great defensive tackle. He redshirted. Graham just got in there and has been great immediately. And even as a freshman, you remember against Iowa, remember this, it was a 3rd and short, 4th and short, and you just see, and you don't even have to be some kind of like pro football focus expert. You just be like us, just football fans. You're just watching and you're like, 55's in on a lot of plays. 55 pushes back the pocket. 55 is a lot to handle. 55 is a great football player that gives Michigan a chance to get to the college football playoff. Jim Scarcelli, who joins us on Wednesdays, likes to talk about the point of attack, the tip of the spear. All of the players are important in a defense, but having one right in the middle, having strength up the middle in any sport, is going to really help you. Michigan's great up the middle on defense. Will Johnson's great. Mason Graham's great. These guys are both great. I feel like I almost have to explain myself because the word great gets thrown around an awful lot. This defense was great last year, and they returned a lot of that talent. There's some people that are saying, I don't know about this, that this defense could be better than last year's. Well, last year's was great. They were a championship defense. I believe that this is a championship defense. Now, what about the offense? That's the one. Championship defense. But yeah, Mason Graham, I am putting him on the hype train. And yeah, he's an All-American. He is had 2 of the great years that you can have in Ann Arbor, but he deserves to be there, and he is on the train along with Will Johnson and Jay-Sean Barham and the edge. Look at all these defensive players on the hype train, hyping up that defense, and then the center position, Jyaire put on the hype train himself. That's where I'm at. Let's take some more of the feedback. Drop these glasses. I got to pick them up. Okay. Here we go. Let's get to them. And we start with Mark, who says inside pressure, I think, is worth twice outside pressure. Nowhere to run, and the O-line can't react as well. I hadn't really considered, that inside pressure is worth twice the amount, but if I'm taking a snap as a quarterback and I got somebody coming right at me right off the bat, like the edge guys, you do have an area to get away, but if they're pouring in on you from the middle, is it worth twice as much? Pushing back that pocket. Yeah, I don't know if it's worth twice as much, but I like the premise, Mark. I don't think that people that played the game would be like saying, no, that's absolutely wrong. I think you might be right about that. Jay thinks that Moore and Stewart will be like Hutch and Ajabo this season, and Hutch and Ajabo accounted for like what was it, 75% or more of the TFLs and sacks for Michigan a couple of years ago. So their production way up. I like where you're at with that. Jamie talking about the interior of Michigan's defensive line, saying the more double teams the interior can eat, the more opportunities for the edge guys. Now you guys are talking, you guys are on it. You're right. This defense, Mason Graham, 55. If I'm Sark, when they're looking at the film, they have to have their plan. The first thing they're going to do is, are we going to throw at number 2? And the answer is going to be no. They're not going to do that. They're not throwing at Will Johnson. Sark's going to be like, no, we're going to go away from him. So, Shug, let's see if you can live up. I'm going to just start calling him Shug. Jyaire Hill, if he rings the bell against Texas, I'll just start calling him Shug too, like the coaches. But Jyaire Hill, that's his game. Texas has Quinn Ewers. He loves to throw the ball. He loves to throw it deep. And they're not going to throw the Will Johnson, so they're going at number 20. So Jyaire Hill, welcome to the big time. We'll see how you do there. But yeah, Sark's putting 55's name up on the board first. How are we dealing with him? Somebody else is going to come in and say, well, yeah, 55, but also we got to look at Kenneth Grant. We got to be able to look at Kenneth Grant. And how come I don't know? 78. We got to put 55 and 78's number up there. And you can't double team both of those guys. And anybody that watches football knows that if you can get those double team inside, yeah, you can't double team the edges then. And then if you have linebackers that can run and fill, because you have defensive tackles that are occupying space and pushing the pocket back, Michigan has two guys that they're just going to, you can line them up and they can just get downhill and smack you. Great post by Jamie. Got me all fired up. And I got to admit, Jamie, maybe you're a first timer here. And if you are, I like what you're writing. That's where we're at. Ferris rolls out about Alex Orji. He believes he can complete a forward pass. He puts this on here a little bit sarcastically. It has been his tagline all of this off season. But Ferris understands the hype surrounding the quarterback position and what everybody's thinking about Orji. He was at the spring game, Ferris. I know Ferris was because I saw him. And there are the little groans right off the bat when you saw Orji throwing the football a little bit there. Were you saying that at the spring game right off the bat, Ferris? Mark is confident in the quarterback. Wait, I'm only confident in quarterback because we passed on McCord. Expecting at least that good, which was very good, to pass in a second team all Big Ten 11-1 5-star quarterback. Yeah, again, I don't know if they passed on him or whatever. You would think, though, if I was McCord, would I rather go to Michigan from Ohio State? Again, I don't know. That's going to be a tough one, but would I rather go to Michigan or I'd rather go to Syracuse? JT talking about 5-star receivers don't want to block. The majority are bag chasers. I got news for you, JT. I think that almost my entire life, I think that was a true statement about wide receivers. But everyone's a bag chaser now. So, the whole he just went for the bag. Yeah, everyone's going for the bag. You're going for the bag. I'm going for the bag. And so are high school football players that get a ranking of 5-star, which equals 6 figures. And I know a lot of people, some of you probably went to Michigan and, you guys weren't initially, being offered, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars to go elsewhere. But you were like, if I go to Michigan, is it going to set me up for 30, 40, 50 years rather than taking, 100 or a million? I mean, look, we're all bag chasers now. That's my point. Richard says it's a good sign that Michigan has kept things close to themselves without leaks so far. Yeah, I don't know. There's going to be leaks. So you have every one of those guys in practice and they go home and then they talk to their roommates who might not play football or their girlfriends, or they talk to their parents. And at some point, one of those parents is going to be like, how does the quarterback situation? Somebody's going to say him. And then that guy is going to get on the phone with somebody else that works in this business and they're going to tell them what they think. So you do get those kind of reports no matter how tight. You could be Sharon Moore and get up there and tell every single one, we want to run the tight ship up here. We don't want loose lips or sinking the ships around here. We don't want any of that. And not every one of those guys is going to follow it. Even, say you could be the greatest teammate. Most of the guys don't. They take that, but you never know. You get your girl, and you're not thinking that your girl's talking to. You're like, she's just. I don't say just my girl, but here's which makes it sound, they're very important. Your girlfriends, but you're saying, I'm telling my girlfriend this in confidence, but then it's her daddy. Hey, what did Johnny have to say about the QBs? That's how it goes. But when you start getting, second and sometimes then the third hand information about the quarterbacks, the practice reports and what you hear about Orgy is that the team is behind him. That Orgy is the guy. And that the team believes in him and that they're behind him. Wherever trying to talk about, well, here's the separation and there's still time to go. And there's all that stuff's true. But Orgy has emerged as the quarterback one, but Orgy has been that quarterback. So he was not the incumbent, unless you want to say that they didn't name anyone, but you have two starters in the spring game, but then he was the guy that was standing out there after the spring game down there in the news conference rooms. He was the one that was standing there. None of the other quarterbacks were. Davis Warren wasn't in there. It was Orgy. That's not an accident. They don't go to the quarterback room and just say, hey, let's just pick a name to go. They do it on purpose, those kind of things. So he was the quarterback one out of spring, and he is the quarterback one right now, today, as we sit here and talk about it. Ferris is making some prediction, or just let's see what he's saying. 60% passing, low interceptions, low penalties, and Michigan will be fine. What is fine? Thank you for answering that. 10-2. Well, Michigan was number one in penalties last year. Whether it was penalties per game or penalty yardage, I think penalties per game, they were number one. They got two different. You could look it up and say, no, they weren't. They were in one of those. Low interceptions. Yeah, low turnovers, low penalties. I'm with you there, Ferris. And that's Michigan football. But every team is talking about low penalties and low turnovers. When you have an entire new offense, can you expect an offensive line that's never worked together, that is out there? I think it's going to take time to gel. I have Michigan at 10-2 as well. I think that they're going to drop the game to Texas because of the offensive line needing to develop, and the same thing with the quarterback. But I'm high on the team. I don't think they're going to lose another game to the end. And I think they're going to make the Big Ten championship game. So, yeah, 10-2. You say, you're stupid. Well, I might be. We have to make a prediction. And I can tell you, always when it comes down to a prediction, I hand ring over them and do everything else because I don't like picking against Michigan, because people want to just pick Michigan to win it all. Just always pick Michigan to go undefeated. And then over the years, they say, it doesn't happen very often. So in the last year, I think we all picked Michigan to go undefeated because it was their time. But 10-2 gets you into the college football playoff. And to use your line, Ferris, that will be fine. If Michigan, if you could just tell me that they will get to the college football playoff, I don't care if they lose to Fresno and Arkansas State. Although it would be pretty wild around here if they lost to Fresno and Arkansas State, if they made the college football playoff. Now, will there be anybody predicting that they will go to the college football playoff if they lose to Arkansas State or Fresno? No. Both of them, absolutely not. Talking about firing people. Now in 98, they started out 0-2. The honeymoon was over pretty quick in 98. OSU should be the center that was having such a difficult time and was one of the MVPs for Michigan in the Rose Bowl is now the Buckeye center. And yeah, it was not only a problem in the Rose Bowl, but it was something all year long that center had to deal with. So that's up here. And it's the one thing that Michigan has right now. Michigan is in all Ohio State's fans' heads, and the players and the coaches. And it's a really big thing. So not that it doesn't matter, but the Ohio State can win every game 50-0, and they get to that Michigan game, and the center dribbles one back, and Ryan Day, okay, let's go. Good to see D Original, TJ Guy, and McGregor. McGregor is on to the pros. So the backup edges, TJ Guy, people are expecting. The coaches have named TJ Guy as the guy, the player to step up behind the starters at edge. Who is that other one? Dominic Nichols. There's a number of other guys. Ishmael, Kumba. Kumba looked like. You can't always, you get a little dangerous when you say, boy, he looked good. But not only did he just look good, I'm talking about Americ Kumba, who was at the spring game, but he looked good, not just standing there and how he looked in his unit. He looked good running around too. And, he made a play or two. Did he have the hit? Or the fumble? I have to go back. I do remember I liked it. I liked him. Scar liked him when it came down to it. Couple more when it comes down to it here. Dave's says the lack of offensive line isn't going to be an issue in their quest to not get beat again by Michigan is a bold theory. Yes, it is. Talking about Ohio State. Mark says Sab came out of nowhere, almost. You think Michigan has several really athletic almost in the defensive back room? I'm with you on that. Here's Kenneth. Countdown to giving out snot bubbles. That secondary is going to be dangerous because of the transfers and depth. Their greatest asset is their length. I like the post. Kenneth? Tim? Dennis, a couple years ago, I saw an interview of Jyaire Hill's coach telling Sam that Hill was a Desmond Howard-like player on defense. Let's go. Yeah, well, coaches like their players. Is it Shug or Suga? I need to get it right for my podcast tomorrow. I think it's Shug, like Suge Knight. Actually posted on the Maize and Blue Review yesterday because I wasn't 100% sure myself. Josh Henschke was spelling it S-U-G, which I don't know. Is that Sug? If it was phonetically, it would have been spelled S-H-U-G. But I thought that I heard, so this is a problem where, I didn't get, sometimes when you're talking nicknames, and look, Ferris, it's good because you're a broadcaster and you want to get it right. I want to get it right as well. And I thought that I've heard out of Sharon Moore's mouth, shook. I just read what Lamar Morgan had to say, and I've heard other people mention Suge. So I think that it's Suge. But then I said, I think it's like Suge Knight yesterday, and nobody said, no, you got it wrong. Somebody made a joke about Suge Knight and what he brings to the table, and maybe, some of that with Jyaire Hill. But so I'm 97% sure that it's Suge. But if I'm wrong, I apologize. Scott is declaring that Will Johnson will play a little wide receiver this year. Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't think that's needed. Let's just be the greatest defensive player ever, and let's just go from there. But I get it. He's the best corner since Charles Woodson. He wears number 2. They won the championship last year, so I don't put anything. I wouldn't put anything, for Will Johnson saying that he couldn't do it. I'm just if I had to weigh in, I would say no. I don't think that he would be, but I don't want to be a downer either. That's exciting talking about Will Johnson. Yeah, let's go for JJ. Hope that is he's going to be okay. Guys come back from MCLs all the time in the pros. There's somebody saying Dylan Gabriel is being overrated. Well, he's the Heisman favorite, so I could see that's not too crazy of a take there. This seems a little crazy. Arch Manning to Michigan. So the thing about this, Scott, I know you're a big Michigan fan, but if Arch Manning was to come to Michigan, what that would tell me is that Michigan had a big hole at quarterback. And what you are actually hoping is that Michigan does not have a hole at quarterback. You're hoping that Michigan has their starting quarterback for the next at least couple years in Alex Orji, and that they won't need to be going out and looking at any transfers. So that's it. Mr. Smith said if McCord was so good, trust me, OSU wouldn't have let him leave out of the building. Yeah, I'm going to disagree a little bit with that, Mr. Smith. I think Ohio State is a little, and you understand where their cockiness comes from with the quarterback position because they've had such a great run at the quarterback position over the last 20 years. They have done better than anyone when it comes to recruiting and then getting those guys and putting them out on the field and developing. I'm not talking about how they play in the pros. I'm talking about how they play for Ohio State. And McCord was only a first-year starter. I feel like they used him as a scapegoat. And when you're a scapegoat, sure, did he light the world on fire? But can you expect every single guy that's going in there? Are you really telling me that you think Howard's that much better than McCord? I don't see that if I was an Ohio State fan. But look, you go out there, you don't, and you don't light the world on fire right away. Get him out of here. All right. But I think Ohio State, they might regret that. Ohio State fans are probably sitting around saying, oh, only Syracuse wanted to take him. What do you think's going on? That kind of thing. So you could be right. Scott, is Doug Karsh the real Michigan insider, or is it Big John Jansen? Well, those guys, once you are in, these guys are essentially on the team as broadcasters. Of course, John was on the team. Those guys are not telling you everything that they know. They just, when you're part of the team, they're an extension of the team. They can't really tell you everything that's going on. It's tough for them when they have a radio job and people are telling us, tell us something. And they kind of have to, they can get creative with it. It's easy when you know everything that's going on. You can give a little bit of a hint, here or there, but it's also tough because you know some things and you got to be kind of like biting your tongue. Kenneth is good with Orgy or Warren. Somebody liked Richard liked a stat from somebody. I don't know what stat he's talking about. So I'm getting down here where it might be about it. 3 more. Tim has a breakout player, and it's going to be one of the wide receivers. Michigan teams are going to make Michigan throw the ball, and some of those speedsters, we'll see a lot of big plays from them. Yeah, I'm going to have to try to pin you down. When you say one of the wide receivers will break out, I need you to go ahead and declare which one it's going to be. If you're going to it's like if somebody say, hey, what's your prediction? It's like, I don't know, 9 or 3, 10 or 2, 11 and 1. It's like, oh, okay, he just gave me 3 predictions. I want 1 prediction. Give it to me. No ties. Make your pick. Scott says Texas has 4 or 5 good running backs. Well, from the looks of things, they've lost 2 of them already, right? So they're down to 2 or 3, which is still pretty good, huh? I don't know, as good as you can be with any team in recruiting and everything else, and I know Texas is really good in recruiting. Just think about Michigan. If they lost, Mullings and Edwards, you say, wow. And they'd be like, no, they've got Ben Hall and Jordan Marshall. It's like, it still hurts. You're talking about losing those kind of guys. Rashad's talking about salesmen and lawyers. Yeah, this was me getting on the saying that of selling, that if I was selling Michigan, it's an easy sell. I hear you. I did just watch Better Call Saul. And in Saul, if he wasn't into sabotaging himself all the time, he would have been a very good lawyer and a good salesman. Both of those things. He was creative at those. Okay. Juju says that most of all of Texas lost their best pass pro running backs. So there we go. And then Kenneth, bet Michigan in the Texas game. Injuries matter. Losing both of your pass pro backs is going to throw their offense off. They will be forced to play finesse. The defensive line will pin their ears back. I will smash. Using the latest information in why you're going to make a selection, I'm all right with. Here's the thing. You have to, unless you're picking Michigan to go undefeated, you're picking them to lose somewhere. And originally, I thought that it was Oregon and OSU. I thought those were going to be the toughest 2 teams. But I think because of the gel factor and the ramping up factor and the development factor of both the quarterback, the offensive line, and the entire offense is why I selected the Texas game. But I don't mind being wrong on that one. And it's just a pick. And I'm making it. And I don't think I'm going to change. I haven't made, I'll get a stone out here and I will put it in stone before the season starts. But I am leaning towards, and I'm guessing that it's going to be, those would be the 2 losses. But it's a pretty good point, and I'm going to have to mull over. How many players is Texas going to have to lose before I would be like, okay, now I like Michigan? Has the line moved? Would be something. We'll see. Okay, everybody have themselves a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining us. Again, smash that like button. Smash the comments on the podcast. Tell your friends about the show. And then also, when you subscribe and we can get to 5K, we'll throw a big party. Ferris is coming to that party, and hopefully you will too. And we will see you here. Big party coming up on Wednesday at 2 o'clock as Jim Scarcelli will join us. Until then, we'll see you over on the Maize and Blue review on the Den. Everybody have themselves a great day. Thanks for watching or listening.